Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is going to be another in my RHCE practice session series where I am preparing for the Red Hat Certified Engineer exam. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite everyone who has not subscribed but is watching to click that subscribe button and ring the bell when you do so you can be notified of when new content is available. I do want to remind everyone that the videos in this series are not necessarily intended to be authoritative information, nor are they intended to be tutorials, but rather they're opportunities for me to go over the exam objectives, talk about them, and try some examples and such. And the idea is at the end of the video, if I feel pretty confident about what I've spoken, then I'm probably going to do pretty well on the exam if there are tasks related to those objectives. Otherwise, I'll add some of the stuff to a list of things I'm reviewing between now and the exam, which will be in just under 2 weeks. So diving right in, we're going to continue with the use Ansible modules for system administration tasks that work with and then whatever item that is. And in this video, we're going to look at file systems. So I'm already logged into my Ansible control node here, and I went ahead and created some partitions on my LabRel AN01 VM, and we're going to create some file systems on those. And the couple of modules that I'll be looking at to be able to accomplish this will be the file system module, because it's going to actually configure the file systems, and then also the mount module, because remember on the exam, anything that you do has to survive reboots, and albeit just creating a file system itself would survive a reboot, a file system generally needs to be mounted in order to be, or not generally, it has to be mounted in order to be used, or at least my best understanding about how file systems and such work. So let's get started with that. I'm going to create a playbook. We're just going to call it file system test.yml. We'll do the usual of giving it a name, working with file systems. Host, we'll just do LabRel AN01. And we are going to have to become for this. I'm going to leave vars blank for just a minute, and then tasks. And we'll just call this create some file systems. We use the file system module. All right, I'm trying to go off of just sheer memory here. The some of the parameters that we're going to need, I believe one is going to be a source, because that's going to be our block device for that. And I believe we're going to need fs type. And you can also do some options and such, but let's take a look at the documentation real quick just to make sure. Ops, yep. It wants dev instead of source. Okay, that makes sense, because technically it's not, I guess it's not necessarily a source, but it's a device that we're going to use with this. And the ops, this would be something such as, let's say that you're putting a file system on top of a VDO volume. You know, one of the options that you have to do for that is not to discard blocks, and so that's where this would come in. Now, one other thing is that's available to you is the Resize Fs option, and this, I know with ext4 and XFS file systems, you're able to expand that file system. So let's say your block device grows, you can do XFS. I think it's XFS_growFS is the XFS command, and then I think Resize 2Fs is the ext4 command, but just saying yes with this Resize Fs parameter will give you that same effect. So we'll go back into our file system test and change this source to dev. And I'm going to try to do this with some multi-valued variables. That was something I attempted in a previous video and it did not work out well, so I'm going to give it another try here. Now I've done a little bit of research on that. So with my vars, I'm just going to call them fs, and we're going to have a list within fs. And so we're going to have, let's see, what would be the best way to do this. I'm just going to say dev, and we'll do the VD, and I just happen to know on this server what this is going to be, VDB1, and file system for this, we're going to use XFS. Actually, I don't need to mark that as list. That's where it gets a little confusing when you're doing that. This one is going to be dev vdb2. This file system is going to be ext4 and dev vdb3. And this file system is going to be vfat. Now, one thing I know that I'm going to need to do is install, I think it's DOS FS tools. Let's make sure, because I know that my VMs are minimal installations and vfat's not going to be available immediately for that. So let's do this. Actually, we'll make one for swap as well, which I'm curious if I can actually, I guess I could do that. Well, we'll try it out. So let's do DNF what provides, and what I'm looking for is makefs.vfat. Pretty sure it's DOS-FS tools is the name of the package that I'm going to want to install. No packages found. Well, let's just DNF search. All right, let's just search for DOS. Let's see what comes up. So I know there's a package for this. There it is, DOS-FS tools with no dash. That's what we're going to need. Actually, one thing I'm going to run real quick, an Ansible ad hoc command, is subscription manager refresh. I often have to do this after I've reverted my my VMs to snapshot, so I'll just do that real quick just to make sure that I'll be able to install stuff. All right, so let's add another task here just to take care of what we need for vfat. Use the yum module, name, paste that in there, state present. So now we can use our file system module more effectively. So we're going to loop, and what we're looping on is the variable fs, and here we're going to have item dev. This is one thing I think that can be confusing. I know it confuses me sometimes. Even though the name of the variable is fs, and that's what we're feeding into the loop, and this loop has, it's an array of things, and these things have a couple of different attributes to them. The actual variable that is going into here, we're calling item, and that's just because of this being a loop, but we're still getting the dev piece of that variable and the file system piece of that variable. I'm not sure if fat will work, but we'll give it a try. You can also use the dot notation for this as well, but I try to be in the habit of doing the brackets. We're going to add another here, dev vdb, dev vdb4, and file system is going to be swap. All right, so just looking this over for a moment, I don't see any glaring syntax issues. One thing I'm trying to do with some of these practice sessions is slow down a bit, because I've had several videos where I just have syntax errors all over the place, and I know on the exam that's just effectively going to cost me more time if I'm going too fast and making a bunch of syntax errors. So we'll do a little test here. Ansible playbook, syntax check, file system test. It looks good, so let's run it and see what happens. All right, so it looks like that worked. So we can do swap. Excellent. All right, so now we'll do an ad hoc command, Ansible labrel an01, and the command we're going to run is block id become, and let's see what's returned with that. All right, good. So we have dev vda1 xfs. I'm sorry, vda1 is the yeah, that is good. It's good that's still there. That's where OS and such is, but we're looking for the VDB one. So we have an XFS, we have an ext4, we have a vfat, and we have a swap. Excellent. One thing I did want to look one more time in the documentation for file system is see if we could have went ahead and put a label there. Maybe it's something you could do under ops. Perhaps. Let's take a look at the more expanded documentation, because I know if you do makefs, I believe it's -L or -L, that you can go ahead and put the label on the file system if you wanted to use labels. List of options past that makefs command. I suppose I'm not going to worry with that right now, because typically I don't use file system labels anyway. I usually use UUID for this kind of stuff. Clear my screen. So we have our file systems. Now what we're going to need to do is mount them. And one thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to run that ad hoc command again. And I'm just going to output that to file systems.txt. And I did this to be able to get the UUIDs. I'm not sure if UUID will work with mount. I know you can do the path to your file system device, because that would be for mounted, or for the mount module, that would be your source. But you may be able to use UUID with it. Let's try it real quick and see what happens here. So let's go back into our file system test.yml. And I am going to go down here and do my little vi:/r cat file systems.txt, just to get the UUIDs in there a little bit easier. Wow. Get the file systems in there a little bit easier. All right. Or the UUIDs rather. So I guess I could loop through this. Yeah, that would probably be the best thing to do, would be to loop through it. So let's try doing this a little different way. I'm just curious to see if this will work. So name, we're going to mount the file systems. We can use the mount command. And for this, we're going to have source. We're going to have path, which is going to be the mount point, which one thing about this, the mount module will create your path for you. You do not have to have that created ahead of time. Though I'm not sure if it will do subfolders. I guess we'll give that a try as well. So path, and then state, and there are a couple different states with this. Absent will take away your mount. The mounted state, what that's going to do is both mount the file system as well as write to RHCE Fs tab. Present, I believe, just mounts the file system without writing to RHCE Fs tab, but we'll double check the documentation to make sure of that. All right, and we'll make our loop. So we're going to try a couple of things with the loop here. We're going to start with UUIDs. So I'm going to, since I'm in a GUI with this, I'm going to take advantage of the copy and paste options with that. I have a feeling this is not going to work. And the reason I think that is basically what this is doing is writing the entry to your RHCE Fs tab, and it's just going to have the numbers there rather than UUID. But we'll see what happens. So UUID is going to be that there. And the next piece is going to be path, mnt test. I'm trying the subfolder to see if it will actually write all of that as well. I know if I just did like mnt, xfs or whatever, that would work, but I'm curious. XFS. Oh, we need to have file system type as well. Forgot about that. And all these we're going to do mounted. And I believe there's an ops option as well. So if you need to do special things, like if you're mounting the ISO and need to tell it to be a loop device, you can do that there. So FS type is going to be XFS. All right, and we will rinse, repeat here. Meant to copy that rather than paste. Now we paste. Path is going to be mnt test mount ext4. FS type will be ext4. Next UUID, this will be our vfat file system. Its path is mnt test mount vfat. FS type is vfat. And then lastly, our swap. Path mnt test mount. Actually, I'm not sure if we necessarily need that for swap. This is just basically swap on, swap off. So we're just going to do FS type. So maybe we won't do swap with this iteration of the mount. All right, we'll just do these three and then we'll see what happens here. So we'll have our item UUID. This might seem like a lot, making up this loop and such, but if you think about it, it'll run a bit faster. And actually, I think it ends up you use less time writing your playbook versus repeating this entire thing over and over again. But the thing to remember about your exam, Red Hat's really not concerned with are you using the most elegant solution as much as it's does it work. So item, path, and file system type, item, fs type. So let's see if these UUIDs work, and then I'll get rid of this stuff here. Now, I didn't look at my syntax. I didn't do a once over of it, so let's run the syntax check. All right, checked out. And let's see what happens. And they error out. Yep, special device, whatever, does not exist. That's what I figured. So let's take a look at the actual documentation for mount. Let's see if there is an option for using UUID for this. I don't think so. I think you have to actually tell it a device for that. And that's going to be our source. Yep, device to be mounted. Yeah, we're not able to use UUID for that. You can actually, while we're in here, we'll take a look at this. You can specify if, like, where your RHCE Fs tab is. Like, if you want to use something else for that, you're probably not going to have to do that on the exam, at least I would think not. And we'll look at state while we're here, see if I am correct with that. So mounted will be actively put in, present will be, okay, so I think I was incorrect with that. So you have unmounted, which obviously will unmount it. Present specifies to be configured in FS tab but does not trigger a mount, and then absent will remove it completely. Okay, so I was a little confused about that. So let's go back into our file system, test.yml, and I'm just going to be lazy. We're actually going to keep that value of UUID, but I'm just going to change to the device. So dev VDB1, dev VDB2, and dev VDB3. And I'm going to try tags one more time. I tried that at a previous video and it didn't work out. So make fs. So let's check the syntax. All right, that works out. And actually, I'm going to do one other thing. I think it's list tasks. Let's look at this real quick. Or I thought there was one that would list your tasks. Oh, it's further up. Yep. -- list tasks. You also look at do -- list tags. So let's do that. File system test. Yay, and it found my tags. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do is just run that particular tag because we don't need to run all the other stuff. Tags or tag? We'll say tags. Gathers facts. Excellent. So now it's doing the mount the file systems. Awesome. That's what we wanted. And now that that works out, I suggest on your exam, especially if you're testing stuff, it might be worthwhile using your tags. So that way you don't have to wait for the entire playbook to run to get to, maybe this new thing that you've added. You just tell it to run whatever tasks have the tag. All right. So to verify, let's do an ad hoc command. And we're going to try something here. I'm going to use the shell module. And we're going to do cat RHCE Fs tab as well as df-h. Let's see what we get out of this. All right, so we got our RHCE Fs tab. And it looks like all the items are there with default 00, and it looks like all of the items are mounted. Excellent. So now I'm curious about swap. And what I want to do real quick is see if there is a module specifically for swap, and it looks like there is not. So let's go back into our file system, or file system test rather, and we're going to run mount one more time, and we're going to do this for swap, because I have a feeling that path is going to be a problem. But what I want to first try to do, dev VDB4, swap, and state mounted. I'm just curious to see if we can do swap with this. Tags, swap. I don't think so, but figured we'd try this. Yeah, missing required arguments path. Looks like I made some other mistake. I see what I did. Okay, let's try this again. Yeah, missing required arguments path. So I wonder, let's just try this. Let's give it a path. Let's see what happens. So test mount, and we'll do, and actually I just realized that this answered a question from earlier. It will do, you know, your child directories and such for that. Yeah, unknown file system swap. So I guess if we need to, we can just do the, use the command module to do basically swap on for that, rather than using the mount. So I guess let's do that, because I don't want to leave this unfinished. So I guess what we need to do a couple of things here. So first I'm going to use the shell command. And what we're going to do for this is cat, or actually we're going to echo, we need to get the UUID for that. I actually can use UUID for this. Copy that, go back into our playbook. So we're going to echo UUID equals this, and then what we typically do is swap defaults 0, 0. And we are echoing that to RHCE Fs tab. I'm going to give this a tag swap, and then we're going to do another task of mount the swap. And this will just do the command module. The reason why I'm having to use shell for the other is because we're going to be redirecting data to the RHCE Fs tab. I guess I could probably do that with command as well. I know you have to use shell for pipes, so I assume for output redirection we'd have to do the same. So swap on -a, tags swap. All right, so let's see what happens. All right, so let's do an ad hoc command. And we want to cat RHCE Fs tab. And we want to do free-mh. All right, so the RHCE Fs tab looks the way that we want. However, these partitions were 5 gigs large. So perhaps what that did, I see what I did. I realized my mistake. My mistake was that I used the actual swap that's there rather than the one that we created. Okay. So like, this doesn't make any sense. Why did that not work? So now we have to change how we're going to deal with this in our FS tab here. Okay. So now we need to do line and file because we're going to have to make a change. So regexp, and we are looking for something that begins with this. We're going to replace it with this. This is going to be RHCE Fs tab, and state is present, which is going to say if this regexp is present, replace it with this line. And then that should give us what we want. Probably should use line and file to begin with. But this shows you that usually there's more than one way of doing something with Ansible. So file system test, tags, I keep wanting to put tage, swap. Did I make a mistake with my tags? Maybe. Let's see. No, swap, it's there. Dash tags. Yeah, I see what I was trying to do. It's like trying to do tags as the options. Okay, so now let's do we'll do the same ad hoc command we did before. There we go, and we see that, that was unexpected. So like that wiped out the entire RHCE Fs tab file. I wonder why that was. I need to do a little bit of reading on line and file because I was expecting it to replace that one line, but not replace the entire contents of the file with just the one line that was there. So definitely something I need to look at, which seems to become a pattern with some of these videos. I'm finding things that are not related to the actual task at hand that I need to go over between now and the exam. But the end effect that we wanted was that swap was there, but I ended up wiping out all of my other file systems. So that presents an issue. I'll have to look at that outside of my video here. But for the actual file systems, be able to make them and mount them, and my initial thing of just using the command to add the swap information to RHCE tab, I think I'm going to consider these objectives a pass. And so the thing I'll be adding to my list is going to be about line and file behavior rather than about file systems and such. I hope you found this useful for you with your own studies. Again, this is not intended to be a tutorial, but rather as you watch me kind of struggle through things, perhaps that gives you some ideas of, if you're struggling with the same thing, some possible solutions for it. I want to thank returning subscribers again for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed, to click that subscribe button and ring the bell. Feel free to leave comments, either questions or critique or praise. I'll respond as I have both time and ability. Thanks again for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.